Discover the incredible bond. 7 surprising moments that transformed our lives with wolves. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart heavy as she stared at the pile of overdue bills cluttering her kitchen counter. The air felt thick with the weight of her responsibilities, a relentless reminder of the life she was navigating alone. As a veterinarian and single mother, she wrestled daily with her dual roles. Kevin and Lily needed her, and the animals at the clinic needed her too. But lately, it felt like the ground beneath her feet was shifting. Her commitment to the clinic earned just enough to keep the lights on, but that didn't erase the anxiety that rumbled in her core. Just yesterday, Kevin had asked for a new soccer ball for his team, while Lily needed supplies for her class presentation on endangered species. The thought of disappointing them made her stomach churn. She resolved to find a way, but doubt gnawed at her. What if she couldn't provide? What if this overwhelming burden buried her under financial strain? With every worry, the pressure mounted, leaving her mentally exhausted. The faint buzz of her phone interrupted her spiral of thoughts. A text from the local wildlife rescue network flashed on her screen. They needed her expertise to rehabilitate a pack of injured wolves. Sarah hesitated, a rising thrum of fear slicing through her desperation. Wolves? A part of her felt drawn to the notion of helping these creatures. Another part recoiled, terrified by the danger they posed. She flashed back to the time she'd turned them into myths for Kevin and Lily, crafting fairy tales of fierce, misunderstood beasts who roamed wild but were ultimately noble. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Immediately her thoughts spiraled deeper into chaos. The idea of confronting wolves electrified her with fear. What would the kids think? What if the townsfolk rallied against her? A line of anxiety stretched across her mind, fearing judgment from neighbors who already whispered about her parenting choices. Her resolve momentarily flickered. Could she withstand their ire while educating her children about loyalty to nature? Days later, standing outside the Wildlife Rescue Center, the idea had morphed into a commitment. The wolves were skittish yet curious, their eyes glinting with a primal intelligence. And that's when Kevin bonded with Luna, a gentle creature with silver fur and an inquisitive gaze. Each moment they spent together burst with unexpected joy and connection. But as Sarah witnessed their budding friendship, a looming dread filled her heart. What if her son's admiration became a target for ridicule? As the community around her tightened its grip on fear, echoes of whispered warnings filled the air. The wolves were dangerous, some said. How could she protect her son from that overwhelming tide of fear? Torn between the love for her children and the risks she felt in rising against the community's growing disdain, Sarah's internal struggle intensified. Each time she met Luna's gaze through the wire fence, a mixture of determination and fear wrestled violently within her. She was standing on the edge, about to plunge into an uncertain world where justice and family collided. And as Sarah's heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead, one question echoed louder than all the others. What sacrifices would she make to protect both her family and the wolves that stirred something deep inside her? The following days blurred into a whirlwind of emotion and mounting responsibilities. Sarah awoke each morning with a sense of urgency that jolted her from sleep. Her mind instantly flooded with thoughts of bills that awaited payment, her children's needs, and the lingering question of how to reconcile her roles. The gentle echoes of Kevin's laughter during his time with Luna stood in sharp contrast to the fears that tethered her reality. Around the clinic, whispers about her involvement with the wolves began to swirl, tainted with judgment. She caught snippets of conversations among fellow veterinarians. Comments about scientists not fully understanding wild animal behavior weighed heavily on her. The fear of being outcast gnawed at her. Could she continue her work at the clinic while advocating for the misunderstood creatures? Her heart craved independence, yet the prospect of leaving her safety net felt like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. As she operated on a particularly weary dog one afternoon, her hands worked mechanically, almost instinctively, while her mind drifted. During her shifts, she often found solace in the animals, believing they understood her struggles. This time she felt a tug at her consciousness. Reflections on her own fears and aspirations began to emerge in raw clarity. Was she not a protector? A healer? What was it that drew her to the wolves in the first place? As these thoughts cascaded through her mind, her commitment solidified. She needed to embrace these fears, not flee from them. That evening she sat with Kevin and Lily, the dim light casting shadows across their faces as they sorted through school projects. Lily's class focus on biodiversity sparked an idea. What if she turned her children's fascination with wolves into an opportunity for learning? Inspiration ignited within her. She could transform her fears into a teaching moment, guiding them through discussions about the natural world and the essential role of predators in ecosystems. The need to protect these creatures began to intertwine with her identity as a mother, bringing a burgeoning determination. With a new focus, Sarah returned to the Wildlife Rescue Center, this time intent on understanding more about wolf behavior. She approached the staff there with purposeful questions, her resolve sharpening as she absorbed knowledge. The more she learned, the more she recognized parallels between the wildlife's plight and her own struggle for respect as both a veterinarian and a mother. Each lesson drew her deeper into the narrative of these majestic creatures. She volunteered more often, gradually finding her confidence and nurturing the burgeoning pride in her connection to nature. Yet whispers still followed her, raising her concerns. Just as her commitment to the wolves grew, so did her anxiety over how far she was pushing against societal norms. The conversations at her clinic grew more pointed and critical, with some colleagues dismissing her focus on wolves as an obsession rather than a responsibility. Determined to confront that discontent head-on, she steered the conversation with her peers. Using her education to defend the biology and psychology of these creatures, she challenged their misconceptions while holding steady in her conviction. Encounter after encounter, Sarah felt the tension mount. Each rebuttal hardened her resolve. She was not merely confronting fears. She was emerging as a champion for the wolves both at work and at home. Amid the whirlwind of change, a potent question loomed large. What would she need to sacrifice to fully embrace this newfound purpose? Would the cost of standing up for the wolves and her children clash irreparably? Or would it reveal her true strength? As she prepared for an upcoming community meeting focused on wildlife education, a familiar dread filled her. The moment felt like a tightrope walk between her human fears and her burgeoning passion for advocacy. Would she stumble or soar? The stakes had never felt higher. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, warming Sarah's back as she prepared breakfast. The familiar sounds of Kevin and Lily bickering over who would get the last pancake filled the space with a comforting chaos. Yet beneath that facade of normalcy, her heart raced. The imminent community meeting, a platform she had envisioned as a springboard for her advocacy, loomed like an impending storm. Each scratch of her fork on the plate seemed to echo the doubt in her mind. Forging ahead was so much easier in theory than practice, and today she could feel every whisper, every skeptical glance from her colleagues tightening around her like a vice. They had made it clear they considered her focus on the wolves exaggerated. Yet sharing this passion with her children ignited a fire within her, a powerful juxtaposition between the praises of motherhood and the harsh judgments of her professional environment. Facing the mirror in her bedroom, she practiced her opening lines. Today, I want to discuss the essential role that wolves play in our ecosystem. But the words caught in her throat, sounding foreign and hollow. Would the group truly listen to her? Frustration prickled at her, urging her to put the pragmatic voice of the veterinarian aside and channel her inner advocate. She jotted down her thoughts, outlining the critical points she hoped to make. The meeting room was eerily quiet, the air hummed with anticipation and skepticism. Ordered rows of chairs faced her like a jury awaiting her defense. As each seat filled, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility press down. If she wavered even slightly, would it undermine her mission? When her turn came, she took a deep breath, clutching the table edge as if it would ground her. As she began, The distant memories of gentle pups and resilient wolves provided her with strength. She spoke passionately, her voice steady despite the flickers of doubt in her mind. She emphasized the intricate connections between wolves, their prey, and the larger ecosystem, a delicate balance that required respect and understanding. But as her speech progressed, her audience's expressions morphed from curiosity to skepticism. A colleague's raised eyebrow, a snicker from another corner. These small reactions hit harder than any critique. She paused, fighting against the urge to retreat. What you don't see is how wolves, as apex predators, maintain their environments, how they shape the land and the community around them, she pressed, desperation creeping into her tone. And as veterinarians, aren't we tasked with preserving life in all its forms, especially for those who cannot advocate for themselves? A silence fell over the room, shifting the energy. Was she breaking through? A nod from one of her supporters in the back urged her onwards, and she charged ahead, intertwining the narrative of wolves with her own struggles as a mother. The faces in front of her flickered between skepticism and intrigue, and Sarah seized the moment, making the connection between the wolves' fight for survival and her own fight for respect and recognition. As the meeting concluded, the murmurs of the group blended into a symphony of opinions, mixed, uncertain. Some were convinced, drawn into her perspective, while others remained staunchly resistant. The abrupt transition from hopeful to deflated wheeled her feelings into turmoil. She had breached the barrier, but did she win enough hearts and minds to create substantial change? While she walked home, a storm brewed within her. Faith in herself battled with the fear of rejection. Most importantly, the future of her mission hung in the balance. Had she pushed too hard? Or was this merely the beginning? The stakes had indeed escalated. As Sarah arrived home, Kevin and Lily awaited her eagerly, their personalities reflecting the duality of her recent debate. What would this confrontation mean for her family? Would they stand by her side as she pushed forward? As conversations resumed, an unexpected call from the mayor flashed across her phone. The message was clear. He wanted to meet with her. A sense of purpose replaced her earlier uncertainty. But now the looming question struck deeper. Was she ready for what this meeting could entail? Or was this the first step down a path she could not turn back from? The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room where Sarah sat, her mind swirling with the implications of the mayor's call. She absently stirred a cup of tea, the steam mingling with her turbulent thoughts. What exactly did he want from her? Was this a chance to showcase her ideas, or a preliminary warning meant to intimidate? Lily's laughter drew her attention, breaking the fog of uncertainty. She watched her daughter engage in an imaginary adventure, riding atop a chair like a galloping horse. For a brief moment, Sarah felt a tug of warmth, a reminder of the innocence she longed to protect. But that warmth quickly chilled as her thoughts shifted back to her mission. She had stepped forward, and now she needed to determine how strong she truly felt. Clarity formed like a beacon in the murky waters of doubt. Sarah realized this meeting could be a pivotal moment, not just for her advocacy, but for her personal growth as well. She needed to prepare. That evening, she carefully crafted an agenda, her mind racing with strategies and possible objections. What if the mayor doubted her intentions? Or worse, what if he dismissed her as too idealistic? Each nightmare scenario pushed her to consider the strength dwelling within the wolves she admired so much. Their resilience was not just a lesson in survival, it was a model for her own journey. As she wrote, she channeled that strength, reminding herself that vulnerability was not weakness, it was the bedrock of authentic connections. The following day, she found herself pacing back and forth before the mirror. The blue dress she had chosen felt both empowering and restrictive, like a second skin that both showcased her purpose and constrained her voice. With each passing moment, she felt the stakes rising. The mayor wouldn't just hear ideas, he'd judge her credibility, her authority. What if he challenged her? A flash of determination ignited her resolve. She wouldn't bury the emotional aspect of her advocacy. It was that emotional connection, her love for her children and her passion for the wolves, that would resonate most deeply. She delved deeper into her thoughts, unraveling her hidden competencies. The connection between her professional role as a veterinarian and her personal motivations began to crystallize. She saw how her experiences shaped her viewpoint, intertwining facts about wildlife preservation with her role as a nurturing mother. This duality became her strength, not a liability. Arriving at the mayor's office, a sense of foreboding surged within her, momentarily dimming her glow of confidence. The sleek decor surrounding her felt unwelcoming. It stirred feelings of inadequacy. Yet, as she was ushered into the mayor's office, something shifted. The room hummed with possibility. Here was her platform, her stage. The mayor's warm greeting contrasted sharply with her own apprehension. They exchanged pleasantries, but as the conversation shifted to wolves and conservation, Sarah felt the familiar burn of passion igniting within her. She was no longer just a concerned advocate. She was a mother driven to protect her children's future, an intricate tapestry of hope and necessity woven into each explanation she provided. But soon, she detected skepticism in his eyes. It was a subtle shift, but it was there. He leaned back, arms crossed, listening with an air of patience that barely masked his doubts. Did he consider her an eloquent dreamer or a skilled professional? "Sarah," he began cautiously, "what exactly do you believe can be done from here? How do you plan to engage the community?" The challenge hung in the air, and her heart raced anew. This was the moment. Had she found her footing, or had she stepped too far into the fray? She inhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts into a fierce articulation of action, purpose, and unity. An appeal not just for wolves, but for a shared vision that encompassed all living beings. As her words flowed, the energy in the room shifted. The mayor was leaning forward now, listening intently as if she had sparked something deeply rooted within him. Every instinct within Sarah urged her to dig deeper, to expose the underlying connections that made her case more than just about wolves. It was about preserving balance, nurturing life, and ultimately understanding her own journey in this expansive ecosystem. But just as her confidence peaked, she noticed his brow furrowing. An unsettling realization hit her. Had she gone too far? What repercussions would her boldness bring? As silence enveloped them, she glimpsed the precarious edge of her endeavor. Would belief and determination be enough to shift the tide, or was the mayor's skepticism a wall too steep to climb? For the first time, worry gnawed at her. The stakes had never been this high. What if she couldn't sway him? Tomorrow held a promise of potential reckoning. Would this meeting embolden her or expose her weaknesses? The silence stretched uncomfortably, each second echoing Sarah's unease. She searched the mayor's expression for a hint of his thoughts, but his eyes were inscrutable, leaving her feeling exposed. It was as if he were weighing not just her proposals, but the entire essence of her character. Instinctively, she shifted her gaze from him to the plush carpet beneath her feet, her mind racing with the potential consequences of her words. Had they stirred doubt instead of inspiration? The adrenaline that had fueled her speech began to dissipate, replaced by a creeping sense of inadequacy that gnawed at her resolve. But then she remembered the wolves, their strength, their unity, the way they moved through life, unashamed of their purpose. To confront her fears now, Sarah had to channel that same spirit. She straightened her back, summoning the energy that had fueled her passion moments before. "Mr. Mayor," she said, allowing conviction to lace her voice, "I understand your skepticism. My vision may seem idealistic, but it's grounded in reality. Changes don't happen overnight, but they start with dialogue and education. Awareness is key." She could feel the flood of emotion surging within her, the roots of her aspirations gripping tight around her heart. He paused, seemingly intrigued, but there was still that flicker of doubt lurking in the corners of his brow. "So, what actionable steps do you propose?" The question felt like a challenge, an invitation for her to either rise to greatness or falter under pressure. She had prepared for this, outlining tangible steps, not just impassioned ideals. Education programs in schools could infuse children with knowledge about local wildlife, fostering respect and understanding. Collaborating with local environmental groups can create community events that emphasize coexistence, encouraging everyone, from children to adults, to see the value of preserving our ecosystem. This isn't just about wolves, it's about rebuilding our relationship with nature. The mayor seemed to consider her, the steely professionalism in his demeanor slightly softening. Are you sure this approach will resonate? People often resist change, especially when it involves habits they've held onto for generations. His challenge wasn't a rejection, it was a test to gauge her understanding of human behavior. Here lay the opportunity to reveal her hidden competency, her knowledge of connections. Changing perspectives is always difficult, but it starts with storytelling. People relate to emotions. I have personal stories as a veterinarian, experiences that showcase the human-animal bond and the impact of our actions on wildlife. Suddenly, Sarah saw a glimmer in his eyes, a hint of recognition. She was no longer the idealistic woman in a blue dress. She was a bridge between two worlds. In fact, she continued, a hint of urgency fueling her words, I could showcase my experiences through local school visits or public talks. The narratives that highlight our interdependence with nature can shift minds and hearts. He leaned forward, reminding her of the momentum they were building. What's your ultimate goal with this project? My ultimate goal is to foster a culture that values preservation. If children can grow up understanding the importance of coexistence with nature, they'll advocate for it as adults. This is about more than wolves. It's about ensuring a balanced future where humans and nature thrive in harmony. For the first time, the mayor's crossed arms relaxed, accompanied by a tentative smile. You've given me a lot to think about, Sarah. Your passion is undeniable. But just as hope surged within her, the air turned thick. However, he added, his tone shifting gravely, this will take significant support to gain traction, and I'm concerned about the political climate surrounding such initiatives. The unnamed fear flooded back, an undercurrent of dread. Was he telling her that despite her earnestness, the path was riddled with obstacles beyond her control? Would she have to confront not only the mayor's resistance, but the broader societal undermine of her vision? As she sat there, the weight of potential political pushback settled heavily upon her shoulders. The challenges she had anticipated paled compared to the realization that even an empowered voice could drown in the tides of resistance. Tomorrow's echo would demand clarity, not just of her ideas, but of her resolve. One thought persisted amidst the growing storm within her. What if her greatest test wasn't the mayor's skepticism, but the uncertainty that now enveloped her dream? The hour had come for her to prepare for a confrontation that could shape her legacy. Would she amplify her voice amidst the chaos, or would it falter, confined within fear? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over her small apartment, Sarah leaned against the kitchen counter, fighting the tumult in her chest. The mayor's words replayed in her mind like a stubborn film reel. Significant support, political climate, obstacles beyond your control. She had walked into that meeting armed with visions and strategies, invigorated by her sense of purpose, only to be reminded that dreams often collide with harsh realities. Sinking onto a stool, she tapped her fingers against the cool surface, her thoughts a chaotic symphony of doubts and determination. The wolves loomed larger in her mind, symbols of resilience and adaptation. If they could navigate the perilous landscapes of their existence, why couldn't she navigate the treacherous waters of politics? She opened her laptop, the familiar humming sound filling the room as she searched for inspiration. Articles about wildlife conservation blinked back at her, filled with success stories of grassroots movements that had overcome hostile opposition. One particular piece about a community that banded together to protect local wildlife caught her attention. They faced similar doubts and skepticism, but rather than retreat, they amplified their voices, employing creative strategies that engaged the public's hearts and minds. That was it. Perhaps she had been looking at her challenge too narrowly. The mayor might have been a gatekeeper, but he wasn't her only audience. People, real people, were vital to this mission. School children and their parents, community members who loved their countryside, they could become not just advocates, but champions. The thought ignited a spark within her as she began to type. She detailed a plan that would center around storytelling, not just her stories, but those of the community. Personal testimonies could serve as the soil from which new growth would sprout, a tapestry of interconnected lives woven together through their love of nature. She envisioned a series of workshops where she would invite local families to share their encounters with the land, wildlife, and the consequences of neglecting their shared environment. As she wrote, the fear that had anchored her thoughts lifted, revealing a path illuminated by collective memory and understanding. Stories could bridge divides, creating an emotional bond stronger than any political rhetoric. Just as she began drafting a post for social media to rally support, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Marissa, a friend she had met at the veterinarian clinic. "Sarah, we need to talk. I have some contacts in environmental circles that might help you with your project. Can we meet?" The invitation felt like a lifeline tossed her way amid turbulent seas. A wave of hope washed over her. Collaborating with other passionate individuals could amplify her impact. She quickly replied, arranging a meetup for the next afternoon. In the stillness of her kitchen, Sarah felt the rekindling of determination, a pivot from trepidation to resolve. She recognized that she wasn't just trying to sell an idea, but to ignite a movement, a collective consciousness rooted in understanding and empathy. The mayor's skepticism would not define her journey. She would carve her own path, anchored in her conviction to educate and inspire. As night enveloped the city, she set a new intention: transform individual stories into a chorus of voices that demanded recognition and change. She saw it vividly now, the faces of children, parents, and community members rallying together, echoing the ideals of connection and coexistence she was so passionate about. As thoughts expanded and possibilities unfolded, the question of political support loomed larger. Would she have the courage to present her ideas, not just to the mayor, but to each person who could sway public opinion? Tomorrow she would step out, not just a dreamer but a catalyst for change. The ground beneath her feet felt steadier, but uncertainty still danced in the shadows. Was she ready to confront those who would resist her vision and shield their own interests? The moment of truth was looming, and in her heart, a quiet but fervent voice echoed. The time had come to face not only the mayor but also the heart of her community's fears. As the first light of dawn streamed into her apartment, Sarah felt an electric charge in the air. The meeting with Marissa loomed ahead, and the potential she sensed in their collaboration sparked within her a newfound urgency. Weaving the morning's fragrance of coffee with her aspirations, she busily organized her notes, outlining key points she hoped to discuss. This was her moment, and she was determined to seize it. Yet, beneath her fervor, a shadow skittered through her mind. What if her enthusiasm intimidated Marissa? The last thing she wanted was to come off as yet another idealist in a sea of pragmatism. Pressing her palms together, she steadied her breath. The wolves, symbols of instinctive cooperation and survival, sparked a revelation. Everyone has their specialty, their role in a larger ecosystem. Arriving at the cozy cafe, she spotted Marissa seated at a corner table, an array of loose papers sprawled before her. A wave of warmth washed over Sarah when she greeted her friend. As they settled in, Sarah noticed Marissa's thoughtful expressions as they skimmed through her project outline, her brow furrowing occasionally in contemplation. "I love this idea about personal stories. It has the potential to resonate deeply," Marissa said, leaning in. "But consider, how do you envision this reaching people outside your immediate circle?" The question hit with precision, sending ripples through Sarah's thoughts. She had focused so intently on the heart of her community that she hadn't contemplated how to break those barriers. "I suppose I need a way to amplify these voices beyond the familiar," she stammered, admitting this gap. "Exactly." Marissa's tone was measured yet encouraging. "What about digital storytelling? It's a powerful platform, and many activists are using it effectively to inspire change." A flash of insight invigorated Sarah. She could blend the stories she wanted to share with engaging formats that bridged the gaps, the very obstacles the mayor had highlighted. The image of young children recounting their heartfelt adventures in nature, narrating whispers of triumph and loss, transformed into videos and podcasts resonated within her. We could even use these formats to illustrate the emotional connection people have with the wildlife, Sarah suggested, her excitement palpable. What if we created a series that addresses common misconceptions about conservation through these narratives instead of just presenting facts? Marissa nodded, her eyes glistening with enthusiasm. Now we're on to something. Let your community's history with the land inform the future. Sarah's mind raced with images of community members, ordinary yet extraordinary, populating her digital tale. But beneath the excitement, an unsettling seed of doubt burrowed in her mind. Would people genuinely contribute? What if they perceived her approach as mere advocacy masquerading as vulnerability? As Sarah pushed these doubts aside and refocused on her evolving plan, Marissa chimed in again. And remember, target local news outlets, engage with schools. If you can reach younger audiences, they could become natural advocates for the project. Closing her eyes for a brief second, Sarah felt a tightening in her chest. News outlets and schools. The stakes were climbing. She was diving straight into the current of public scrutiny, exposing herself to potential backlash. Yet a part of her bristled at the thought of retreating into anonymity. The wolves persevered. Surely, she could find courage within her own narrative. Outside, the sky hung heavy with clouds, a prelude to a storm threatening to unleash its fury. As they wrapped up their meeting, the weight of responsibility settled warmly on her shoulders. With each tick of her heart, Sarah felt propelled by the very fear that had once paralyzed her. It was not just about survival, it was about thriving, together. As they parted ways, Marissa reminded her to tap into her network, to not shy away from utilizing the connections she'd cultivated. Sarah nodded, determination hardening her expression. It was almost time to step into the light and confront those who might wield power against her vision. The murmurs of dissent from the mayor's office echoed ominously in the recesses of her mind, but now she understood that she was armed with more than just her ideas. She bore the stories of the community. Driving home, a fierce resolve swelled within her. Nearly every story deserved to be told, and hers was only the tip of the iceberg. If she would emerge from this endeavor not just as a witness, but as an architect of transformation, she would need to be prepared to face scrutiny. The next challenge loomed. The first workshop, where she would ask the people to share their voices. Could she create a safe environment for their fears and hopes? As Sarah turned into her block, another thought sparked. The mayor might not be her only challenge. Shadows of others, opponents, skeptics, and allies, danced in her mind, awaiting her next move. As Sarah approached her front door, the weight of anticipation grew heavier, mingling with the storm brewing outside. The workshop was only days away, and she sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating a landscape of fear and ambition. It was time to translate her ideas into execution, to transform the scattered threads of her vision into a tapestry that others would understand and embrace. She rifled through her notes, trying to discern what would resonate best with the participants. What stories would invite the warmth of trust? What methods could she employ to create a sanctuary for vulnerability? The thought of asking others to unfold their lives, even for a moment, made her pulse quicken. Yet this was her mission, to provide a voice to those who felt silenced. Sifting through her paper, she found a quote that Marissa had scribbled during their meeting. "Storytelling is an invitation." Sarah pondered its significance, pressing her fingers against the keys as she crafted an outline to define the workshop's structure. It needed to be inclusive, engaging, less like a lecture and more like a conversation around a warm fire. She knew that people closely bonded over shared experiences, especially when those experiences highlighted their struggles and victories. But doubts crept back in. Could she really invoke this level of interaction? Sarah envisioned each participant, their faces set with hesitation or curiosity, and she felt an urgent desire to ease the barriers they might erect. Perhaps a game or an icebreaker could serve as a conduit, bridging initial discomfort. But could she be animated enough to pull them into the experience? Fear began to twist in her stomach. With hesitant fingers, she typed out icebreaker questions into the search bar, knowing she had to find a way to not only initiate conversation, but also spark passion. Should she choose questions that delved into personal experiences related to nature? Or perhaps something lighter? She mused on the intricacies of her audience. Would they be receptive to candid revelations about their relationships with wildlife? Or would fear of judgment create an impenetrable barrier? An idea began to form. She could start with a fun, light-hearted prompt before gradually escalating to the deeper queries she truly sought. Her skin prickled with excitement as she crafted a list of questions, each one a small step toward unlocking pieces of each person. Her computer chirped, alerting her to an incoming email. It was from Marissa, following up on their conversation. "You have to remember, Sarah, you're not just asking them to recount tales. You're inviting them into a dialogue about their lives. They're not subjects. They're storytellers, too." The words resonated. Perhaps this was her hidden talent, not just to communicate her vision but to cultivate others' abilities to articulate theirs. She quickly Googled tips on facilitating community workshops, writing down key strategies that would foster a sense of safety and connection, inviting authenticity without judgment. With renewed determination, Sarah created a rough draft of materials she would include: guidelines for storytelling, inspiring examples, and a framework for respectful sharing. There was no way to know how the workshop would unfold, but she could ensure that it was a safe space, the shield against her own doubts. Yet, beneath the surface, new insecurities bubbled up. What if the expectations she set led to disappointment? What if her attempts for connection fell flat, leaving her exposed? The thought struck her with disquiet. Could she truly lead others when she herself struggled with the very fears she aimed to alleviate? But she reminded herself of one irrefutable truth. Every impactful journey began with a first step, whether hesitant or bold. The storm clouds outside swirled ominously, mirroring the turmoil within her. And for a moment, she found herself staring at her reflection in the window. She didn't need to be perfect. Vulnerability could resonate, could inspire trust, could build community. Before rising from her desk, she took a deep breath, channeling the very essence of her endeavor. As the rumble of thunder played in the background, she scribbled one last note. Be authentic. Be brave. With a sigh of resolve, she posted the workshop materials online, preparing the way for real voices to emerge. But an unsettling question hovered in her mind. What if the very people she sought to empower were the most resistant? As Sarah navigated to her email accounts, she noticed correspondence with individuals who had previously expressed hesitation. She mustered the courage to reach out personally. The stakes were high, but she had stepped onto this path. The moment of reckoning loomed just ahead, unknown, full of potential struggle, yet pregnant with promise. Would her invitation to share their stories be embraced, or would it fall short under the weight of skepticism? The following days blurred together, each one punctuated by Sarah's relentless preparations. Her desk became a battlefield strewn with printouts, sticky notes, and half-filled notebooks. As she sifted through thoughts, she found herself oscillating between moments of high hope and spirals of self-doubt. Every time she opened her laptop, her heart surged with a mix of eagerness and apprehension. Would anyone attend? Would they engage? Each question felt weightier than the last, and she couldn't shake the sense of commitment wrapped around her, an obligation not just to the people who might show up, but to herself and the vision she desperately wanted to bring to life. In the quiet of early mornings, she practiced her introductory speech, repeating phrases that felt commanding, yet warm. She often lingered on, vulnerability is strength, knowing this mantra was one she had to embody in front of the group. After all, if she couldn't stand firm in her authenticity, how could she ask others to do so? On the eve of the workshop, Sarah found herself at the edge of a personal precipice, peering into an abyss of potential outcomes. The ominous storm still loomed, pounding rain against the window like a relentless heartbeat. As she locked her gaze on the swirling torrents outside, thunder crashed violently, reverberating through her chest. Was it a sign, she wondered? A challenge to rise up against the noise of uncertainty? With a deep inhale, she turned away from the tempest, determined to focus on what she could control. She drafted a final email to Marissa. Sitting in the silence, fingers poised over the keyboard, each word crafted with intention. I want to make this meaningful, but I'm scared. What if I fail? As she pressed send, a shift occurred. It was a release. In acknowledging her fear, she realized her narrative was also theirs. Imperfect, layered, unfolding. Her fear wasn't merely a hindrance. It became a bridge, leading her toward a deeper connection with those she hoped to inspire. The night unfolded slowly, anxiety settling heavily on her chest. But amidst it all, a sense of resolve emerged. As she scrolled through the email list of attendees, she recognized names she hadn't expected. She reminded herself they, too, carried uncertainties, even if deeply hidden behind their own facades. She no longer saw them as strangers, but as fellow travelers on this uncharted path. Dawn came with muted sunshine breaking through the clouds, illuminating her cramped workspace. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a vivid clarity that felt transformative. She dressed with intention, donning a simple yet vibrant shirt that made her feel grounded and capable. Looking in the mirror, she whispered her new mantra, I am here to empower, not perform. The words filled her with a sense of purpose that steadied her nerves. Upon her arrival at the venue, anxiety gripped her anew. The setup felt sterile and daunting, a stark contrast to the warm atmosphere she envisioned. Yet as she shuffled chairs into a circle, she crafted an environment that felt less intimidating. She included plants and soft cushions, a visual invitation that echoed her ideals of connection and comfort. Then came the anxious minutes of waiting, heart pounding as each minute slipped away. Watching the clock flicker, she questioned herself again. What if no one came? What if they remained silent, encased in their own fears? But as the first few participants trickled in, she felt a flicker of something profound: curiosity, connection, hope. With every arrival, she began to notice the shared expressions: nervous smiles, hesitant nods, familiar layers of vulnerability. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of their collective intent. With each individual that settled into the circle, her heart lightened, igniting the spark she had hoped for. Sarah recognized, amid the uncertainty and risk, she was not alone in this journey. Once more, she called forth her mantra, channeling their burgeoning energy into clarity. Together, they could create this space, nurturing their own stories, empowering each other to share the unfiltered reality of their lives. As she welcomed them with open arms, a thought flickered at the back of her mind. Could this be merely the beginning? What lay ahead was an even greater challenge, diving deeper into their collective vulnerabilities. It was then she realized she was not just leading, she was also learning. What awaited her as they began to share their tales of connection and doubt? With that tantalizing uncertainty lingering, she opened the floor and asked, "What brings you here today?" The answer glimmered in their eyes, an invitation to unfold stories yet untold. The workshop had transformed into a symphony of voices, each participant breathing life into their stories, revealing fears and triumphs intertwined with their connection to nature. Sarah felt the energy pulsing through the room, lifting the weight of her apprehension and replacing it with a deep sense of purpose. This was a moment of collective empowerment instead of mere presentation, an invitation for each person to step forward, held by the warmth of shared understanding. As she guided discussions, she infused each query with authenticity, recognizing the delicate balance within the room, the dance between vulnerability and clarity. Lives unfurled in rich textures. A father spoke about his daughter's fascination with birds, weaving it through his own hopes for their future. A local teacher articulated her struggles bridging classroom teachings with real-world experiences, revealing mutual fears of disconnect. Each tale echoed her own journey, and her insecurities melted into a recognition of their shared narrative. Sarah leaned into the rhythm of storytelling, carving space for reflections that led the group toward deeper connections with the natural world. Ideas flowed organically, and as others opened up, she felt her own challenges illuminated, no longer held within solitary confines. The conversation began to shape around the wolves, their resurgence in the local ecosystem representing the possibility of rebirth for her own aspirations. At a pivotal moment, Sarah raised her voice with confidence, drawing the threads of their narratives toward a collective vision for the wolves. "Imagine if we could host a community event dedicated to celebrating these connections," she proposed, her voice steady and assured. "A place where we share our stories through art, workshops, and interactions with the wildlife around us. We could harness our insights to create an education program that respects both nature and our community." A murmuring chorus of agreement surged through her audience, igniting a flicker of hope that cascaded with each shared nod. The initial hesitations dissipated, faces transformed with bright eyes reflecting newfound clarity. This was where their power lay, united in purpose. As they discussed potential avenues for advocating wildlife preservation, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. The workshop blossomed into alliances formed over shared dreams, and she recognized the strength that came from harnessing collective energy rather than perceiving isolation within fear. Each revelation steered her further away from doubt, showcasing growth not just individually, but communally. That evening, as the workshop concluded, Sarah basked in the afterglow of shared stories and triumphs. She had not merely led a session, she had facilitated a movement, fostering a space where everyone could express their aspirations and fears. In that moment, she also reached an essential realization. She had conquered the silence that once bound her. The feedback from participants resonated with gratitude, emphasizing that her courage had inspired them to consider risks they previously hesitated to face. Weeks passed, and Sarah's dedication to the wolves led to substantial community changes. The mayor reached out once again, intrigued by the momentum she had built. The decision to help integrate wildlife education into local school curriculums and disseminate knowledge about the balance of ecosystems now tasted within reach. Her voice emerged as a trusted advocate, creating alliances that bridged her initial concept of storytelling to tangible results. Days later, as Sarah stood before a packed auditorium the night of the proposed community event, she gazed out at the engaged audience, a testament to the growth she had inspired. Attendees ranged from children gripped with curiosity to adults who had once clung to skepticism. The room buzzed with anticipation as Sarah took a deep breath, surging with a confidence born from struggle and unity. "I thank each of you for being here," she began, her words cascading over the audience. "Tonight, we're not just sharing stories, we're crafting a future. Together we can champion the balance we must preserve. Let's connect, inspire, and protect what binds us, the desire for a community that thrives alongside nature." Applause erupted as she proposed interactive activities crafted from their earlier conversations, the culmination of individual transformation steadily culminating in a palpable collective energy. As she stepped down from the podium, Sarah felt an unmistakable sense of achievement encompassing her, a journey of exponential growth recognized not only through the transformed individuals before her but also through her own remarkable evolution. She stood as a facilitator of change, a mother who fought for both her children and the misunderstood guardians of the wild, proving her place firmly established amidst the echoes of compassion and respect. In the shadow of the wilderness, two loves merged, the nurturing instinct toward her children and her commitment to protecting the wolves. No longer daunted by fear, Sarah had emerged as an empowered advocate, a role defined not just by her profession, but by the profound connection she had fostered within herself and the community around her. This victory wasn't merely hers alone. It was woven through the fabric of the community, where stories sparked awareness and ignited the desire for change. In this moment of fulfillment, she had achieved all she sought: a solid confidence, recognized competence, an established position bridging her professional and personal aspirations. The journey toward transformation remained alive, vibrant, and above all hopeful, a living testament to the way shared narratives propel individuals into collective growth. Now, as Sarah stepped away from the podium, a renewed sense of purpose washed over her. She was ready to lead the charge into the future, not just for herself, but for the wolves, her children, and the community she had come to cherish. "This is your moment," Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.